build it, sell it, right? Like, so there's that philosophy of, I'm going to build this franchise now. We went from getting into it, investing into the business. Now we have to build it. In order to exit out, we have to build it. So something that's lucrative.
You're listening to Meet Long Island, where every week we speak with business owners from all across Long Island and dig deep into how they started, how they grew, and what they are doing now. You may recognize some of the people and places behind them, but we will uncover the stories that you haven't heard yet. Your host, Arthur Frischman, is a native Long Islander, a Northport Tiger, and launched his first business here at the age of 16. As a serial entrepreneur for the last 40 years, he loves speaking to other business people about their daily grind and what keeps them in the game. Thanks for joining us today. Now, let's go meet Long Island.
So welcome Peter Kourounis to the show. Peter is a native Long Islander, a Lindenhurst Bulldog, a sign shop entrepreneur, a franchising expert, and a podcaster. Peter, welcome to the show.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Arthur, for having me.
I'm looking forward to this interview. Tell me and tell my readers a little bit about you.
Let's start with where I was as a designer. Coming out of high school, I took a lot of design classes. I kind of knew that I was very talented at a very early age. I got into trouble for making fake IDs because that's how good of a graphic designer I was during my adolescent times. Coming out of high school, or even sometimes actually during high school, I was working a couple of side jobs. I never did the landscaping thing or the snow removal. That was not me. I was always very focused on making a good paycheck for myself. So I would work at places like Radio Shack and Circuit City, Starbucks. That's right. I know how to be a barista, like with the best of them.
My wife does it too.
Does she? Does she really? That's great. That's great. There was a lot that I did at a very early stage. I thought that I would be in the technology background, working at Circuit City and Radio Shack. I really had a knack for that sort of thing. It wasn't really my calling. I found out very early on that no matter which job I had, I was often using my design skills to work within that job. So if it was working at Starbucks, I was designing their menu boards really nice. I was designing some flyers. If I was working at Circuit City, I was creating their newsletter, bundle flyers, like buy this Mac compact PC with this printer and this package and it's $9.99. I was being creative with those design skills, but nobody took advantage of my design skills more than my father did. My father's business, he has a bagel store, he had a catering company, and it seemed like almost every day I was working with him on another flyer, another logo design of some concept he wants to come out with, or another juice that he wants to promote. There was always a need in my father's business. And I said, you know what? This is really interesting. But even when I'm 22, 23, 24 years old, I still had really no idea what my calling was. I just knew I had this skill. So when I was 24 going on 25, I kid you not, this is a true story. I was very active in the bar scene. Obviously, at that age, I had a lot of friends, a lot of girlfriends, and all we like to do is go out. And I thought what was out there was not really what I would do. I wanted to do something myself. So I was looking at buying a bar in Smithtown. The name of the bar escapes. Oh, I remember the name. It was called Bamboo Bernie's. I took my father there, and my father was just like, he was supportive. He was very supportive, but he said, Pete, no, I will not financially back you on a project like this. And I was heartbroken. He said, but I would financially back you on something that you're good at, like a sign shop. I'm like, what are you talking about? Where did the sign shop come from? I'm talking to you about a bar. I want to be a bar owner because I think I could do something better than what's out there. He took me to this little storefront in Amityville and said, this could be yours. And I said, what could be mine? Said, well, if you want to make a sign shop, we could do it together in this little place here. It was like 800 square feet in the village of Amityville. I thought about it, took him up on a couple of things. He said, let's buy a couple of quick pieces of equipment and you could play around with it and see if you like it. But it really wasn't until this one thing happened where I thought, wow, I'm going to jump into the sign business. This is actually pretty cool. My father contracted a sign company, a current sign company, to do some window graphics on his windows of his bagel store. I think he did full one color windows, just one color vinyl, and it said something like, it was 4 windows. I remember it vividly. It was 4 windows. They each said something different. One said like $4.99 dozen bagels on Wednesday. One was, we do hot coffee, egg sandwiches. It was pretty nice. The design was really great. And he told me that he spent $800 on these windows. And I said, and at the time, I'm like, $800 is more than I'm making in 2 weeks working at any of these jobs. How much did that cost? So I actually went to the sign company that did my father's windows, and I said, listen, I'm thinking about getting into business. I just have really one question for you. You did my father's windows. How much did that cost you to make? And the guy said, probably about $10 worth of vinyl, about an hour worth of design, and maybe an hour worth of weeding and masking. And I'm like, okay, Dad, we're getting into the sign business. Shortly after that, it was December 20th. I'll remember it vividly. It was December 20th, almost at that time right now. So December 20th, I signed the lease. Every dollar I had saved was put into the business. But I knew from the very start of starting this business, I needed to have a great name, great branding that would often look like it would be franchisable. And I needed to take on a partner. So this was very early on. I realized I'm not knowledgeable in the sign business. I just knew I wanted to get into it. I started a sign business, and then there we go from there. That's where my journey into both sign shops and print shops and franchising had begun. Yeah, it was Sign Me Up, Signs and Advertising Solutions. Very long, probably made a little bit of a novice mistake there, but Sign Me Up was the name. It used to be called Signed Up. My mother, of all people, who I love her to pieces, so hopefully she listens to this, and shout out to you, Mom. Hey, how you doing? She told me, she said, Signed Up doesn't really make sense. You should call it Sign Me Up. Like, that's a play on words. And I said, I like it. I redesigned the whole logo, changed the colors around. Somebody else in my life told me the colors I was using had some subliminal messages, and that it looked too Halloweenish because I was using oranges and blacks, and they just made a simple suggestion. You should use some greens because greens means money. And I'm like, okay, let's change it to green. So I found this nice iguana green and just went with it. And sometimes that's all you need to just get really good advice from the people that are around you.
Just that outside person looking in and saying things you don't always realize when you're so close to the business. So you get started on day one. December 20th, you open Sign Me Up. Now, where do you go from there? How do you build this into a business that you ended up by franchising and moving back? How did you get started?
The journey is very different from starting to where I ended. Obviously starting, you take on everything that you can get. You have to be very active in the community, which has always been something I was very stingy upon. I wanted to do it and do it differently. So when you're active in the community, you start realizing here's this young guy wants to make a name for himself. His father also owns a business in Amityville. So that, I'm not going to lie to you, that definitely helped. I learned very soon, maybe that first month, that whatever I was making, I still remember the very first sign I made. The very first sign I made was a Dallas Cowboys poster for some kid's bedroom. This gentleman, James Sabia, I'll never forget it. James Sabia comes in and says, I'm thinking about making a poster for my son's bedroom. You think you could take this picture and put it on a poster board for me? And that's not what I got known for doing, but that was my first customer. And then I never did another project for this gentleman, but you got comfortable. I got comfortable within my own skin being a business owner and saying, wow, if anybody would buy a project from me, that means they must believe in me, or they must believe there's a value here. Soon after that kind of rolled into graphics on trucks for construction companies, door lettering, holiday signs. Starting in December, there were a lot of people that came to me and said, I need some sort of red and green Christmas decorated sign for my windows, for, advertising this pie or whatever. But I got to be honest with you, there's a story to tell here. I don't know how much time we have, but if you give me 2 minutes, I'll tell you the story about this lovely woman named Debbie. I tell people this for every time I talk about my story. Debbie kept me in business. Every day. There is such a thing. And for us sign shop owners out there, we do know what this feels like. There is a thing where you can get drunk on sign purchases. If you find a creative person who says, wow, these guys can do almost anything. Like if I have an idea, they can make it. So this lady, Debbie, would come into my office twice a day for 3 months. I'm not even kidding. I got proof of this, but it got crazy silly. I need you to make me a prop. I need you to make me a book cover. I need you to design me a logo, an apple pie sign. It was absolutely crazy. And from like January to March, I had to tell her, I'm like, lady, you can't be my only customer. But there is such a thing as getting drunk on creativity. Like when you realize what sign shops can do for any business owner, you can come in every day and think with a new idea and say, can you do this? And that's exactly what this woman did. She would go home and say, I'm going to start selling apple pies. One day it was apple pies. The next day it was lemonade. And the next day it was all these types of story time books that she wanted to kind of bring to life while she was reading to children. Like we all heard the story of Tom Sawyer. So I had to make a Tom Sawyer, I don't even know what you call it, like a log raft. I made it out of like vinyl tubes and designed, and it was really nice. So the things that you would do for business owners in the community you can never say no. So that was kind of my model early on is nope, there is no, we'll figure it out. And that kind of got around pretty quickly that if you have an idea, this is the place to go to kind of bring it to life, whether it was advertising or whether if it was a prop or T-shirts or just about anything you could think of that if you own a business, sign companies are your biggest ally. So I learned that pretty early on. And then that's kind of how I got my stride. Like we're in business. We did roughly $150,000 my first year, my first full calendar year. So I guess from January 1 to December 31st, that first year, was about 150,000. And I thought, oh my God, I was making $35,000 working at Starbucks, last year. This is great. I had a great business background because I learned from my father. I went to school for business. So I knew the business ownership aspect. I knew how to reconcile your books and the importance of that. So I knew that very early on. Most people get into business and don't realize that you have to wear a business ownership hat first before you get into whatever your business model is. So there was that. I had that going for me. So I knew, but early on I worked out of an envelope, and only one person on this earth knows that. Now I'm telling everybody on your platform here. I worked out of an envelope for my first year. So I was so cost conscious about like, I have this rent bill it's my largest bill I'll ever have. I'm living at home rent free. I moved out, but that was maybe a year or so later. But I got to pay an $1,100 a month bill. So I'm putting $1,100 in this envelope so that I could pay that bill before paying anything else. So once that $1,100 got in that envelope, I was free to take a paycheck at that point. So I had a very different strategy going forward. And now with all the technology and all these apps and the development of the iPhone, this was all pre that. I was still advertising in the yellow pages back then, in circulars and diner mats and all those things. Now it's completely different, but it certainly has evolved from there.
So now let me ask you said something that you walked in your first day. It's December 20th. You're a young kid. And I remember when I launched my first company, and you walk in and all of a sudden you're the boss, you're in charge of everything. And whether you have employees or not, you're still the boss. At what point did you come in and go, all right, I got this. I can do this? Because I knew the first few months, first year, I was like, am I really in charge? And at what point did you start to feel like I got this, I can do this?
Probably within my first year, right after I secured a partner. That was a big piece of my journey, and I love him to pieces for it. But, he left a very good job working at a sign shop, getting paid a lot of money, and took a chance on me and said, I want to build something myself. I want to build it together. He's always wanted to own his own sign shop. So taking him away from his 9-to-5 job and kind of building what was Sign Me Up together. Once I love this kid to pieces. He's still one of my good friends, but he was my safety blanket. If I needed to know something, I would just go to him. If he didn't have those answers, the partnership probably would have dissolved very early on, but it lasted for over 10 years. It became basically, like I said, my safety blanket. Like once I learned from him while being a business owner, it kind of was really simple for me to feel comfortable in my own skin.
Okay, so now you've got one store. You've done 150,000 in your first year. You're starting to feel a little bit good about yourself. You got a partner coming in. Where did you go? Where did the growth come? And where did you now? I know where you took this to. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you grew and where you took it to and what your decisions were getting there?
Around the same time, after my first year, my father's business decided to franchise his breakfast and lunch restaurant. So very early on in my career, I got used to what does franchising even mean? What does it do for you? How do you make money in it? That I learned at my father's expense. He decided that this is a great opportunity for me to expand my business model. And I was a part of that. I had like a little small role in that where I started off as his marketing director. He used my skills to develop all of the collateral needed to franchise his business. So pamphlets and up sheets and slide presentations, menu creation, things like that. He was getting from me. So we were very involved together in creating his franchise. And then when I would go back to the sign shop every day, I started to think like, Sign Me Up's a great name. I think we could franchise this. So I spoke to my partner and I said, listen, how do you feel about this? And he said, well, I think we should do it, but maybe not right now. So I said, okay, this is 2010. I said, when do you want to do this? He said, well, within 5 years. Okay, that's fine. I said, we need to show proof of concept and we need to start getting, our sales ramped up a bit. So what does that look like to franchise? Well, we set sail to franchise Sign Me Up at a very early beginning here. And in 2014, we decided to pull the trigger. So only 4 years later, a little less than 4 years later, we decided to pull the trigger. And it was because I met somebody. Her name was Debbie Dolan. I still talk to Debbie here today. And I think we know who Debbie is. So, Debbie Dolan and I have known each other for many years. And she said, hey, Pete, I think she actually came in for some signs or some printing. That's how we met. So she said, is this a franchise? And I said, no, it's not, but we want to be. And she said, well, I'm glad I met you because I'm going to help you do it. So she put me in touch with this company based out of the Keys in Florida. I believe they're right on the border of the Keys. Don't quote me on that. But the name of the company was called Signature Franchising. And this lovely woman named Justine got introduced to me from Debbie and said, we're going to take Sign Me Up and make it the next biggest franchise. And I said, well, I like what you're saying, but how much does this cost? I mean, what your words sound great, but how much does this cost? And I was surprised because I know how much my father spent to franchise his business. The number I got from them was significantly lower. And I was like, oh, well, you have this amazing franchise development program. I could take advantage of this and start working with you, developing a franchise. So my partner and I, we said, let's do it. So it was a little earlier than we expected, but it's kind of like this happened. I don't know. I believe in fate. I have faith in these sort of things. If you put it out in the universe, it will happen for you. It was kind of nice to see that there was another Long Island company willing to, or in this case, Debbie and her company was willing to help me and help spearhead the franchise initiative for Sign Me Up.
And so that's where you took it. So now you found a company that'll help you do the franchise. You've got the idea of the franchise. Your partner's on board. You feel as though you have everything in place to start franchising, and you have the replicatable model. What now? Where did you go? How did you grow from there? Obviously, I'll give the heads up is that you ended up by selling out at some point down the road. You sold your franchise off to a even larger company. But how did you get to that point? Before we get to your sale, how did you get to that point, the model? And of course, while you're still building your own business, right? You're still working at this business.
Yeah, there's a story there too. I mean, but the truth is that you start with this philosophy of buy it, build it, sell it, right? Like, so there's that philosophy of, I'm going to build this franchise now. We went from getting into it investing into the business. Now we have to build it. In order to exit out, we have to build it. So something that's lucrative. There were a couple of ways that we did that. It was around Christmas time, 2015. I was at my father's house and was talking to some of the family members there. And I said, I'm franchising. This is exciting. And it was my younger brother. God, I love this kid because he said to me something I'll never forget. He goes, Pete, you have my brother is now involved in the business with my father. So very infused in the restaurant business. But one thing has remained crystal clear is that the restaurant business is a big animal. It's a big ball of wax. The sign shops, it's not. You fit in 1,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet. You have a little equipment. It's a lower or overhead. There's lower staffing. Restaurant, my brother's got like 25 people working for him in one restaurant. It's a monster of a difference between the two. So he said to me, why don't you go out to build another store? It doesn't cost you that much. How much could it cost you? $50,000 to build a replicable store? Wow, that's interesting. He says, yeah, but if you build it, now you have something tangible that you can sell. Here's a turnkey. Here are the keys. All the stuff's in it. It's branded, ready to go. Somebody can come in and say, I could buy this. I could buy this as something tangible. I could buy for whatever I wanted to buy it for. So I knew the first deal I was going to do was going to be like that. I built a store in Wantagh, completely built it from scratch. It used to be a lawnmower repair shop on the corner of such and such road and Merrick Road. And I said, this is a great spot. It's got a lot of curb appeal. Too much driving traffic. This is amazing. Made an offer, got the location. Me and my two partners decided, now I have a second partner by now because I took on a partner in the franchise. And we said, hey, we're going to build this to be our second store and we're going to sell it as a franchise. So we built it. It took about 3 months to build. And after the third month, we decided to open it. We said, if we don't have a buyer right now, let's at least open it as a second location. So we were absolutely killing it. We did 120,000 in one quarter. It was a good location, promising results. And then a gentleman came and said, he was a customer. I don't know if I want to tell you his name, but he's a really nice guy. He was a steam fitter. I'm coming in here every day every week and buying something new from you. He was buying shirts and logo designs and all sorts of print collateral. And he's like, what do you mean you're franchising? You mean I can own this? I said, yeah. He goes, would you sell me this one? I said, yup, I would. It's up for sale. We had it listed for approximately 4 months. It sold within 4 months, which I feel very lucky for. That's not going to happen to every business owner out there. We found a customer that believed in what he did because he was buying so much from us and said, I think I could do this. He bought that first location, became my first franchise owner. So I had one franchise owner inside of 6 months after I started the franchise. So that, again, very hard to do in franchising, but I had some proof of concept. I had my flagship model that is operating very nicely now. And then I had one proof of concept, one person. That's all it takes in franchising is one person to validate your franchise. And then that became, within 3 years, that became 12 locations. Or just about 12 locations. We expanded our model a couple of times. We left Amityville and went into Lindenhurst, my hometown. Then we opened up a fabrication facility in West Babylon to support all the growth. But that was the niche. In order to do something like that, you can't just copy somebody else's model and say you're going to have the same amount of success. There's private equity, there's ownership groups that back all of that for that growth. Two partners that's it. It's whatever money we have in the bank is how we're funding all of this. And whatever revenue we're bringing in from our flagship operation is funding the franchise initiative, right? So in franchising, as an emerging franchise, you need to have a balance of your flagship operation generating revenue because you don't have the franchisees' royalties coming in to support the growth. So I'm living off of revenue on signs. And I made all these promises to people that we're going to have a great franchise by producing the signs for you. That was going to be our niche. If you looked at some of the other franchises out there, they don't even get involved in that. They say, this is how much you should charge. This is where you can get it from through our vendor networks. And it was a philosophical difference. Think about it this way. If they can sell the sign, the franchisee can sell the sign to a customer in their market, they would be giving us the order to fabricate it. So not only do we have the royalty revenue coming in, we also have the fabrication revenue coming in. So now I'm actually doubling down on my franchisees' success. The more they sell, great. The more that we get to make, and I can keep people employed in my fabrication facility. So that was our model. We grew that to 12 locations, multiple states. I had some family members that were investors in and become franchisees. I met some people at franchise trade shows at the Javits Center. That was at the peak of what was happening on the behind the scenes was that my partners and I were having discrepancies between the franchisor relationship and a customer and vendor relationship. I'll put it in a way that you can understand. Let's say that you became a franchise owner of my Sign Me Up company. Between me and you, I'm the franchisor, you're the franchisee. There needs to be a respectful, bilateral communication relationship between the two of us. Like, I'm working on supporting the business model. You're operating within the business model. And anything that I do directly impacts you. So I have to communicate that to you in ways that you can grasp and understand. If I come up with a new vendor, I need to explain to you what the benefits are and why you should use them. If I come up with a new marketing strategy, this is how it's going to help you. So everything that I would do would be at a high level for everybody, but not just for one person. But now let's just say you go out and you sell a customer a job. And you sell a job for $5,000 and I have to fabricate it now. So now that relationship is we're having two different types of conversations. We're having job related conversations for your customer, like timeline, budget. We're talking about delays in production. Those conversations are not always good. If you sold it for $5,000 and I'm selling it to you for $3,000, you might be saying, "Hey, can you work it? Can you give me a better price somehow?" And those conversations are often very difficult to have, especially when you say to somebody like, "Okay, I'm going to have this done on Friday," and it's not done on Friday, and what that does to you, what that does to your business, what that does for your customer. So there are things like delays in this business. So now what's happening is that we're having two different types of conversations where it's, on one hand, it's good, it's pleasant. They're the franchisee, you're a franchisor. But on the other side, it's like tainted and discouraging because we're having these active, heated conversations around your daily jobs that you're selling, right? And now I have a lot of these people. It's not just one person. I promised Friday to 5 other people, that their signs would be done. So it was very taxing, very, very taxing. So behind the scenes, I realized, I said, I think we may have grown too fast. And this is a common mistake that many entrepreneurs make. They get money hungry. I got money hungry. Anybody who knows me well would know that, I was just focused on growth, and development, and we should have been focusing on infrastructure, support, increasing unit level profitability. Instead, I was just focusing on, we need to get more franchisees. And it was good for a while. It was really good for a while. But I had a come to Jesus moment, and I said, I'm going to throw some feelers out and see if anybody wants to gain market share within the franchise model. So I reached out to some of the bigger sign companies out there, Signorama, FastSigns. I don't recall the gentleman's name, but there was one other gentleman that was interested in it as well. Oh, Sir Speedy. From the very, very beginning, I connected mostly with FastSigns. Their philosophies lined up very nicely outside of the fabrication one. Just how they position themselves, what their strategies are. I modeled some of the decor after their model. So it was very synergetic. We just had a nice conversation. Nothing came of it. It wasn't until 18 months later that we actually sat down, they flew me to Dallas and they came to New York and they made an offer. We didn't take the first offer. Pride got in the way of making a deal for a little bit of time. Ultimately, they came back to the table with an offer that I thought was acceptable. We voted on it, and then we sold the company, the rights to the franchise, to FastSigns International. And the executive team at FastSigns was almost just a perfect match for the growth of our current franchise owners, to take them and say, hey guys, I took you as far as I can take you. And now this mega company with 700 plus locations is going to come in and they're going to probably retrain you but they're on their systems, but they're going to be the ones that are going to take you to new heights. I feel very comfortable in saying this. Like, yes, invested into a company. I built it. I sold it, but I did sell it for the right reasons. I sold it because I knew I was not the right person to take all of these people to $1 million operations. I wanted them to prosper. I wanted them to profit, but it was not me. It was not my partners. There needed to be a wider team of people for the amount of support that my current franchise owners needed. We closed on that deal right before pre-COVID. 2019 was the last day of my Sign Shop ownership as a Sign Me Up owner, but it wasn't my last day in being a Sign Shop owner. I decided to take it upon myself to get my best friend involved in this scenario and own a FastSigns. And that's where my journey kind of is right now as a FastSigns owner.
Well, so I want to get back to that in a minute, but I want to ask you this question. You sell off the FastSigns, you sell off your chain, your franchises to FastSigns. And I've had this experience. Building a business is, you hear all the statistics, businesses fail, the percentage of businesses fail, the percentages that make it to $1 million, the percentages that make it to, 5 years. So you get to this point, and I had a software company years ago, and to this day, and we had built it to just under $8 million in sales, and which is realistically a rare in the entrepreneurial scheme. It's not common, but you sell it off, and every day I look back. Not every day, I've gotten over it, obviously, but I look back and should I have sold it? Was it the right time to sell it? Could I have taken it to the next level? And I had the same thought that you had, that I'm done. This is me. I've capped out. I'm very entrepreneurial. I can start from scratch. I can build. But that number had a whole different structure. Going from 0 to 8 was a structure, but going from 8 to 25, I didn't have that skill set. Do you look back now and ever regret or think twice, and not that you missed the business or what, but that you're sitting there, was this the right time? Could I have taken it? What was your mentality, and what is your mentality now looking back on it?
It's a great question. There's really two answers to that. It's what I tell everybody, and it's what I tell my wife. I like to think that both scenarios are true, but they couldn't be any different. Your question, do I look back and live in regret? I don't live in regret. It's like a life principle. I think that everything needs to happen for a reason. My father taught me that very early on. My mother taught me that very early on. Do I miss Sign Me Up? Absolutely. Anybody who knows me well would know that was my baby. I lived and breathed it. I had graphics on my car, hats made up. Anywhere I was going, I was wearing the swag. And like most sign shop owners do now, like that, they love their brand that they created, they're going to wear their flag everywhere. I miss everything about my time, my partnerships, the friendships I built in that business. Like any business, there's hard times. So I'm not going to harp on that. That everybody knows that in business, there's peaks and valleys to any day-to-day operation. I don't miss the valleys. I like the peaks, like anybody else. But what I tell my wife is that I think it was the right decision. I don't regret making the decision. I don't think that I would change. Even if it was presented to me today, I would probably do exactly the same thing. Maybe I would have taken a different path to getting there, but I still would have made that decision because, like you said, I'm able to have like that out of body experience and look at what we're capable of doing and seeing, can I really see us doing 100 owners like this? There was a moment where I thought we could have, absolutely. Like anything else, it was decided upon capital. I was talking to a potential franchise owner who wanted to own, like, sign me up in 9 states and 4 countries. And we were talking about a massively big deal. Turns out that never happened. There was a moment where I was like, okay, if this deal gets done, this is going to put sign me up on the map. We're going to hire 100 people. You know, there was a moment where I thought we could handle it. Yeah, I was thinking about bringing in all the resources I had to expand the business like that. It never happened. The deal fell apart and we couldn't make a deal happen. And at the end of the day, I was still left with my dozen owners and a bunch of families that were saying, hey, like, I need some help, support. And I'm only, me and my two partners, we were only three guys, so what, and we have to run our day-to-day operation. So the way that we were currently running, I don't think that we could have scaled it anymore without investing into more people. So I think that we ended up making the right decision in selling when we sold.
Yeah, I look back and this exact same thing, and my thought process is the exact same. As much as I miss the people and the operations, it was the right thing to do. It was absolutely the right thing to do. Peter, our paths have actually crossed, as you said in the very last thing. You acquired the Wantagh FastSigns, and right now I am actually in the process of acquiring that from Peter and getting into the FastSigns business, which I've been very amazed by, very interested in. What was your final straw to move along before, and we can talk about what you're doing now quickly, and then what was your final straw to move out?
You mean to sell to you?
To sell in general, but it turned out to be to me.
I didn't know you were going to put me on the spot like that.
Yeah, I would have put you on the spot.
As you know, I didn't want to sell. This business just scratches that itch for me at this point. And I just absolutely love working with people. And, just today I'm taking on sticker requests and logo design requests. And, hey, I want to redesign my storefront. And I just love making those types of impacts. And selling never really became a thought to me because I won't have that itch. So that I won't be able to scratch that itch. But the final straw, as you put it, was I just think that I'm ready. I'm more interested in passing the baton to somebody else to get experience in this with my knowledge. To me, I did some deep thinking. I prayed on it a lot. And I said, I don't think I actually will ever lose. My grandmother used to always tell me this before she passed away, is that she'd say, Pete, you'll take your design ability everywhere you go, whether it's franchising or whether you open up 100 sign shops, you'll always take that. And there are people in this world that do not have that skill. God did not bless them with a talent like this that you could take with you and do anything you want with it. So that kind of lived with me, and it stuck with me for a long time before she passed. It's one of the last things she said to me. And I think that that's kind of what it is now, is that I think that no matter what I do, I'm always going to have the ability of designing something for somebody. But I think what I felt more in love with now, later in life, is that I actually like coaching more than anything. I coach a lot of sign shop owners right now across the world. Australia, across the pond, in Canada, and many here in the States as well, where I meet with them once every 2 weeks and we talk about what's going on in their business and how can I help improve it, whether it's through some knowledge that I have in franchising or whether it's just the business experience that I've acquired along the way. I enjoy that more than I actually do designing projects for local businesses right now. I think that it's time to let somebody else feel that love and to allow me to kind of step back and say, hey, I'm here if you need me. And I'm sure you won't need me nearly as much, but I'm here for you and for many other sign shop owners out there that are looking to expand their business and achieve operational excellence.
We'll talk a little bit about that because I'm an avid listener of your podcast. So that is part of your coaching. So I take a moment and talk about that for me.
A little bit last year, we was looking for some things to do during COVID. I believe that we are living in a gig economy right now. So the more gigs I can acquire was going to pay the bills, was going to put food on the table. So I decided to take a gig with Shopbox. And Shopbox is a software for sign shop owners. So anybody who knows sign shop ownership knows who Shopbox is. And they said, we don't really want you as a coach. We have those roles filled, but what we're thinking about doing is expanding our just free knowledge platform. So we're thinking about doing a YouTube channel. Would you be interested in doing some YouTube videos? And I said to them, me? You want me to get on camera and start filming all these things? And I'm like, I've never done that before. I have a nice mic now, but learning cameras and lighting and microphone. Okay, you're going to buy all this. I'll be happy to learn it. So I started producing some YouTube videos, about 4 videos per month. And I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I was just riffing. I had an agenda, a topic, just riff. There were no graphics. It was completely done very amateurly. And then I started realizing, wow, there's a lot of people listening to me. This was scary to me. Just comments from people hey, this really helped change the way I was thinking. And Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you meant by when you said this? And the comments were crazy. I get every single comment. I respond to every comment. And then that kind of led to, hey, would you be interested in doing this for me? Like coaching me? And I was like, yeah, it's another gig. That's fine. Let's absolutely do that. Now that's kind of evolved. That's how it started. We now have we've labeled our company here, the Better Sign Shop. So now I've aligned myself with 2 other industry professionals that I've actually worked with inside of Shopbox. They were great people. And we loved working together, but we knew that our time with Shopbox was going to come to an end. We knew it. We just said, we got to do something different. Mm-hmm. We want to make there's this word impact again. We're going to make an impact where Shopbox wasn't. So we are now the Better Sign Shop platform where we have a podcast. Yes, it's a great listen. They're usually about an hour long episodes talking about every aspect of the sign and print business. We have our coaching, which is you could subscribe to our monthly retainer and become a coaching client. Like I said, I have many of them. So this is an opportunity for that as well. And one of my colleagues does unlimited graphic design. One of my other colleagues does like sign design. He's an amazing designer. Michael Riley's probably one of the best designers I've ever met in terms of like architectural drawings, schematics, and things like that. So when you live within the Better Sign Shop platform, we're actually just like quite literally aligning ourselves like a franchise, but not a franchise. See, like when you buy into a franchise, I guess this is kind of my ideology of why this was created this way. When you buy into a franchise, it's a system, it's a model. And we knew that we didn't want to create a franchise. We weren't looking to create a franchise, but what we did want to create was a system that you can invest in, support, the resources, the vendor network, the training, right? The podcast is just a benefit. But these are some of the things that you're investing in as a franchise. Now we're talking to sign shop owners and saying, here's the Better Sign Shop way. Let's align your company, franchise or not, with us, and we'll achieve what you're looking for together. That's the overall goal. And now I've fallen in love with this more than I have actually designing projects. I scrapped the design project that I was working on and said, I just love working with owners, talking about profitability, having those really tough conversations. We're not talking about high level advice here. We're talking about how do we get you from 10% profit to 15% net profit? How do you buy that next house? How do you buy that retirement home? What should you do with this employee, that's disgruntled? There's a lot of those kind of conversations that are having. And essentially, it feels like I'm a partner, dozens of sign shops. That's what it feels like. And I think that goes a long way as to why I not only feel comfortable selling the FastSigns right now, but also why I feel comfortable with my decision to leave Sign Me Up in the past.
Excellent. Peter, thank you so much. I want to have you back and discuss franchises at one point. Just focus on your expertise on franchising. I think that's an interesting conversation to be had. Peter, that is it. Thank you very much for your time. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I certainly did. Peter?
Thank you so much, Arthur. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Meet Long Island. We certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, leave them in the comments or reach out to us directly. Remember to subscribe, and we hope to have you back for the next exciting episode of Meet Long Island.